Before we jump in, I just want to ask you, whether you're here in East or over in West or you're watching online, what were you doing at 9:45 a.m. on a Sunday morning when you were in high school? Because I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know if Rachel said it for this service, and you don't know this over in West, but 3/4 of our band in East this morning was made up of high school students today. Isn't that awesome? I think that's so cool. What you also wouldn't know, no matter where you're watching, is that over in our student center right now, we have about 45 middle school kids crammed in there, and we have a high school student giving the talk today. So I think it's super cool. Every time we talk about students around here and kids around here, oftentimes we'll use the words next generation, and that's fitting because chronologically they are the next generation. But I always fight it a little bit because what's true of Great Lakes is that our students and our kids are not just part of the church later. They're part of the church now. And what's so cool is that everybody around here invites them in and allows them to volunteer in different ways and participate so that when they go to their schools and they're standing at their bus stops, they're talking about their church, not my mom and dad's church or my grandpa and grandma's church. This is their church, and I think that is so, so cool. Well, another thing that's cool that I just want you to know about is starting this week, we're launching high school groups for the first time, and those groups are meeting in homes midweek, and we've got about 15 kids signed up to go to different groups and building that kind of community just like our adults do. So I'm really excited about where students are heading. If you're sitting in here or over in West watching online and you are or have or ever have been a high school student, I would love if you consider being a part of that ministry in those environments, because it's a cool place to see God do some pretty amazing things. So I am super excited about that. And when you get up here, you can start talking about whatever you want, and nobody can stop you. Well, they could stop me, but anyway. I want to jump in and talk about things that make me mad, because there's a lot of things that make me mad. But one thing makes me especially mad, especially fast, and that's driving. I don't know what happened. When I first got my driver's license, until I was about 35 years old, I was pretty calm, cool, and collected. I think that's maybe how I come across, is like, go with the flow, and that's how I drove for a long time. I was happy to get over into the far right lane, hit it to cruise control, and just ride. I didn't need to beat anybody anywhere. But then something happened. I don't know what happened, but now it's just a mad dash all the time. And by that, I don't mean mad dash like get somewhere fast. I mean, how fast can I get angry? It usually takes about 1 block out of my neighborhood for me to get to the place where I'm mad at everybody else on the road. Because I don't know if you knew this, but everybody's a terrible driver. Except me. I get it totally right all of the time, right? It's just for whatever reason, everybody else forgot the rules of the road, or they just choose to ignore them, or they decide that they are the only person on the road. And I like to tell them that they aren't. I don't do it out loud. I never roll the window down. I don't use a whole lot of sign language. I know a few of us know a few signs that we might use while we're on the road. I don't. But inside the car, I can give it to you like the best of them. I mean, if you were in the car, you'd be like, that can't be the pastor. That cannot be the pastor. Just this morning, I went through McDonald's to get breakfast, and I made my order, and I went to pull up to the window, but the car in front of me, they didn't get their food right away. They were probably told to pull up, which they did 6 inches. And so I couldn't get to the window to get my food, and I was a little hangry. And I was a little bit in a rush to get here on time. And so I'm starting to get frustrated with this person's inability to pull forward. It took someone to go outside, from McDonald's, to go outside to ask them to move forward, which they did, another 2 feet, just enough for me to get to the window and get my food. And then he hands me my food, and he hands me my drink, and he waves, have a good day, yeah, you too. But I didn't go anywhere. I couldn't. I was blocked in because now there's somebody behind me and there's somebody in front of me. And you could see the red like in a cartoon coming up through my head. And my son's like, just honk, Dad. I'm like, I don't want to honk because they probably go to our church and I don't want to get this all messed up. So someone from McDonald's had to go back outside and get them to pull up so I could leave McDonald's, and that just threw me off. I mean, the 5 minutes from Green Bay Road to here was not pretty because I found everybody else. Isn't it amazing how one little pebble in your shoe can become a big rock that just is so annoying and you can't stop thinking about it, right? That drive in the morning can wreck your whole day. Now, driving's not the only thing that I get angry about. I actually like to share a list with you of things that make me angry. I hate furniture assembly. Like, I don't know the last time you put together IKEA. It was probably a long time ago because it's not fun. It never goes well. They make it sound super easy in their instructions, but it is not super easy. I don't like cleaning up other people's messes, which is a problem having 4 children because they do nothing but make messes, and they forgot from the minute they were born how to pick up a mess. They stuff wrappers into couches. They stuff socks under couches. And I don't like complaining, which I realize is ironic because I'm kind of complaining right now. So I'm kind of getting mad at myself. I don't like running late to anything. Like if I decide I'm going to go to Target at 10 o'clock, I want to be at Target at 10 o'clock. And I will get stressed out if it's going to be 10:01. I know it's ridiculous, but it's how God made me. Simple tasks going awry. That's the number one thing. When I say this will take me 5 minutes, why does it always take me 5 hours? Every single time. You know what this is like. This is probably true for guys. This might be true for girls, but I trust that women are just doing it right the first time. Us guys, we got to go to the hardware store 15 times to get one simple little fix done at the house, don't we? And I'm grumbling the whole way, and I'm light-knuckled on the steering wheel driving to the hardware store, and when I walk in and that guy goes, "Back again, huh?" I just want to punch him in the face. Because I'm inconvenienced. And I don't like being inconvenienced. And I don't feel like people are considering me. I don't feel like why do they think the world revolves around them? It should revolve around me. I don't feel consulted, right? Like there's times where you go, if they just asked me how to lay out this street, we wouldn't have this traffic. If they just asked me how to drive their car and what speed they should go, we would not be angry at each other right now. There is something interesting about the way we're wired, where when those things start to happen, our fuse gets shorter and shorter and we get angrier faster. So my question is, what is it for you? What's got you with a short fuse? Don't answer it out loud. And if you're going, probably nothing, check with your spouse, or check with your parent or your siblings or the friend that brought you. They'll be able to tell you real quick. These are the things that get you the most irritated real fast. We've all been there. There's not a single person in all of the world that hasn't struggled, at times at least, with being short-tempered or being irritable. Now, here's the thing that I'm really trying to wrestle with, because this is truly something I'm trying to grow in. I ask myself one question a lot lately, and it's this one. What will be remembered? Like, when I am dead and we are at my funeral, what are the things that are going to get said about me? Odds are they're going to be the way that I responded to the things that happened in my life, not the things that happened in my life. Right? Like, the stories we tell when someone passes away have to do with their character. Not the stupid plumbing that leaked all day long. Not the traffic jam that happened for the 10th time in a row on the way to work. It's not going to be those things. It's going to be how we responded to those things. And because there are going to be stories that are told about us, it begs the second question. Not only what will be remembered, but who will remember it? The answer to that question is terrifying for me. I have 4 sons. They are watching everything I do. They are listening to everything I say. And they are learning how to respond to things in their life based on the way that I respond to things in my life. And if I'm short and I'm quick to get angry, guess what they're learning is normal. Guess what the people in your life are learning is normal. And as Jesus followers, it only gets ratcheted up. We talk about this a lot. We are ambassadors, we are representatives of God. So when people are around us and they see us flying off the handle at silly little things, guess what they assume about God? He probably flies off the handle at little things too, and I should be afraid. Now, you and I know that's not who God is. But we also know people piece together their assumptions based on their experience with us. So we have to be careful how we're doing, what we're doing around who we're doing that with. So because I know it's daylight savings and this is 9:45 and not 10 o'clock anymore, but I know it also feels like it's 8:45, so somehow you came to church earlier than you ever thought you would. I want to give you kind of the main idea for this talk now so that when you fall asleep, you still got the main idea at least. This is the thing that's haunting me lately. This won't matter tomorrow, but they will. This thing that's got you bent out of shape, this insignificant moment that has you mad, seconds in, will not matter tomorrow. But that coworker, that classmate, that student, that wife, that husband, that son, that daughter, that cousin, that grandchild, that neighbor, they will matter to you. So part of what we have to do is choose how to prioritize the people versus the things. And we've been wrestling with, well, what do we want them to say? Like if we asked them about us, what would they say about us? And we've been sitting in some of the things that Paul wrote. One of them was the fruit of the Spirit, right? Love, joy, peace, patience. And then we said, well, we better define love because we say that a lot. And Paul actually wrote a passage that talks about what love is. And this is what he said. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable. And it keeps no record of being wronged. Irritable to me, oversimplified definition is getting mad fast. When I would call myself irritable, it just means the littlest thing is going to set me off. And you feel it, right? You know what that's like from a physiological standpoint. You just feel it right here. You just know one more thing, you're going to blow your stack. And again, we've all been in this place. Now, here's what happens when we become irritable. Everybody in our life becomes some obstacle that we have to pass, that we have to get beyond, that we're going to move over into the fast lane and blow by so that we can get on with what we're trying to do. And this is how a lot of us drive, right? We drive until we get real close to a bumper, and then we move over and we get past them, and then it's like, now we're going to get up to that bumper, and it's funny, every service, people are elbowing. Like, you, right? Like, we just do this. We know these people. These people are in our lives. It's probably not us, but it's others, right? Bumper, 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 and it's how fast can we get there? When we plug in the destination on our GPS and it says it's going to take you 15 minutes, you're like, watch this. Because it's just an obstacle. My kids get in my way when I'm irritable. Way more than they do when I'm not. And you've had this at work. When you are having a bad day and you're just kind of at that edge, for some reason, every single person you work with is the worst person in the world. Not because they actually are, but because you are just mad. And now it's like, well, I got to deal with them. And you've come home and you've said that. I had to deal with so-and-so. And what you're communicating is I was irritable and I had to get past them. But Paul would say, love's not irritable. If we're going to be loving, then it needs to be a solid double line, which hopefully you know is a no passing zone. That love is the idea of I'm going to see them as having a name, and I'm going to be willing to get behind them. I'm going to be willing to support them and cheer for them and wait for them. right? Because that's the whole patience thing. That's the whole kindness thing. That all starts to come together when we say, I don't need to get past you. Is this inconvenient? Yeah. Is this according to my plan and my design? Not even close. But you are more important than my plan and my design. You are more important than my convenience. Is it going to slow you down? Yeah. But that's love. That's what it means to be like God. Do you know how slow God goes for us? Do you know how willing he is to stay in the slow lane behind you so that you don't get left behind? If we're going to be like him, then we've got to do like him. So Paul talked a lot about this. But there's a guy named James who wrote one of the letters in the New Testament, the second half of your Bible that you might read. And here's what's so crazy about James. James is the half-brother of Jesus. And I love to do this. This is not an original thought or original question to me. I'm stealing it from another pastor, but it's such a good one. For those of you that have siblings, what would it take for them to convince you that they were your Lord? What would it take for them to convince you that they were God in the flesh? A lot, right? And yet, here's James, who at some point decided that Jesus was his Lord, his Savior, the God of the universe. And what James saw in Jesus, day in and day out, he realized was what would be required of him and you and me. And this is what James wrote. You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires, period. I think it's interesting that James connects being slow to anger with being slow to speak and quick to listen. This whole morning so far has been me telling you about all of my shortcomings, so I just figure I'll pile them on. I am a professional talker. Like, it's my job. I get in front of people and I talk a lot. And so I am someone that is very quick to speak. And a lot of times I'll sit down at lunch or I'll sit down at coffee and all of a sudden I shouldn't say this happens all the time, but occasionally there's an alarm that goes off in my head. You are talking too much. And I'm just going to tell you why I talk so much. Because if I'm talking, you aren't. And if I'm talking and you aren't, then I'm in control of this conversation. I get to determine the direction it takes. I get to determine how the story is colored. I get to be the funny one. I get to be the intelligent one. I get to have you walk away going, wow. Talks a lot, but wow. So conversely, and again, the opposite of what James says, is I'm pretty slow to listen. And I'm going to step out on a limb and go, I'm not the only one in either room or your living room that would say that's true of them. Like, a lot of times I'm slow to listen, and the reason I'm slow to listen is because that would be me handing you the controls. It would be me saying, you can drive. And you know what that's like. When you are the driver and someone else is driving, you're on edge. You have pedals over there that aren't actually there, and you're louder than you usually are, and you have a lot of opinions about how this should go. Like, we feel out of control, which is what this is all about. The more we talk, the less we listen, the more in control we are. And the more in control we are, the less angry we feel, the less irritated we feel. When I'm late, when I'm caught in traffic, when things aren't going the way I wrote them up, I'm out of control. And that's what makes me so mad. I'm just enough of a control freak. And you are too. So I want to introduce you to something that I lovingly call the angrometer. This is a measure of just not only how angry we are, but the nature of our anger. On one end of the dial is the kind of anger where we see everything as happening to us. Everybody on the road is out to get us. Everybody at McDonald's is out to make us mad. Everybody you work with is the most irritating person in the world. It's not you that's irritated, it's them that's irritating. right? And it's all coming at you. You're kind of the victim of everybody else's inconveniencing. Like this morning, I wake up at what felt like midnight because we had to get up super early. Now, you would think that I've been a dad now for 20 years. You would think I know that teenagers are not going to handle daylight savings day very well. Not me. I just assumed that everything would go exactly how I thought it should. So when one of my sons wakes up and he is a grizzly bear about everything and literally says, I don't want to be here. And I'm like, this is your home. Where else would you be? He was delirious. I got so mad at him because I felt like he was trying to make my day miserable. This 13-year-old boy who's just exhausted. I literally thought it in my head. He's out to get me today. And so do you know what I did? This is what kind of dad I am. I said, fine, go back to bed. I don't want to deal with you today. And I left. That's the kind of dad I am. Because I was so mad. I was just so frustrated. I was beyond okay anymore. I felt so inconvenienced. Because it was happening to me. Now, another third of that, it's I'm angry, but it's kind of happening through me. Like, it's not going to knock me down. It's not going to totally derail me or beat me up. But I'm just annoyed. Right? This is the headache that just won't go away. I can do my day. I'm just annoyed that I got to do my day with this. And a lot of us are there most of our day, actually. We're more annoyed. And then there's the rare few that things are happening for them. And those are the people that are able to kind of reframe whatever situation they're in and go, well, I'm going to learn something here. These are the kind of people that drive you crazy because when you're driving with them and you're stuck at a light, they'll say things like, well, there must be an accident up ahead that God helped us avoid. And I want to be like, but we're still going to be late. Like they're able to just think about things differently, and they spend a lot less time irritated than I do. So James says, listen, if you're going to follow Jesus, if I'm going to follow Jesus, we're going to have to get our heads around this. We're going to have to pull the meter back to get to this place where we see things happening for us and not just to us or through us. But Paul and James weren't the only guys. A guy named David, if you go all the way back to the Old Testament and you read through the Psalms, David will regularly come up against this idea of being slow to anger. This is what he wrote in Psalm 37. Stop being angry. Turn from your rage. Do not lose your temper. It only leads to harm. There is no other route that your anger will take other than harm. It's a bad ending. Every single time. And there's urgency in David's voice when he writes this because he uses exclamation marks a lot in this passage. Because he doesn't want that for you and he doesn't want that for him. And here's why. He saw it on full display. The king of Israel, when David was a young man, was named Saul. And when David killed Goliath, everybody loved David, and they actually started singing songs about him, about how he was better than King Saul. And King Saul had enough of an ego that he decided David's life should be over. And he regularly threw things at him. Eventually, he started hunting him, trying to execute him. Saul was often very angry whenever he was around David. So David knew what this looked like, and he knew that Saul's rage would only drive him to literally harm physically other people. Have you read about road rage in our country lately? That kind of anger always leads to someone being harmed. But it's not just an external. I believe it's internal too. And I don't know if David intended this, but I think it's true. There are studies on studies on studies about the human anatomy and our nervous system, our physiological makeup, that tell us anger overstresses your body. And that would be the same thing as the red line in your car. So I know not everybody's a car person. There's a tachometer in your car. The tachometer measures how many revolutions your engine is making in order for you to go the speed you are, or how fast you can get to the speed you're going. And if you look on that dial, and you might have to, on the digital ones now, we got to kind of shuffle through it, but there is a red line, and they'll call it redlining, and they'll tell you you cannot redline your engine for too long or your engine will explode. It's able to do that for a short while, but not an extended period of time. And so it's just my belief that the more angry we are, the more often, the more stressed we are, and we're living at redline day in and day out, and we're starting to feel it. There's medical journals that have connected anger to stress, to lung deterioration, to heart failure, to all kinds of nervous system issues. And it all comes back to us. We're just living on the cusp of ticked off all day. And David says, listen, it only leads to harm for you and maybe even for them. And then generation later, Solomon, David's son, would write this, wisest person to ever live. In Proverbs, he wrote, short-tempered people do foolish things, and schemers are hated. The dumbest things I have ever done in my life are when I was the most angry. I've broken brand new furniture. Some of you are like, I don't think I should hang out with this guy anymore. I think he needs some help. But I've broken furniture, I've thrown things, I've stormed off, I've yelled at my kids when they spilled milk, like they spilled it, they're children, this is what kids do. But I do foolish things, and here's why. Anger is a secondary emotion. This is what a psychologist would tell you. When you're angry, it's usually because you're something else. You just don't know how to express that well, so you express it with anger. Fellas, I'm looking at you. This is mostly true for us. When we're sad, we're mad. When we're depressed, we're mad. When we're frustrated, we're mad. And when we're mad, we're mad. I mean, we're just kind of mad all the time. And that means we're going to do silly things. One psychologist calls it a blanket emotion. We just throw it over everything. And if you were going to go drive your car with a blanket over the top of it, you would do some foolish things. You would go when you shouldn't. You'd stop when you shouldn't. You'd turn when there's no turn. And people are going to get hurt. You are going to get hurt. So there's collateral damage all of the time in these moments of rage. And part of it is the people closest to you are shifting their understanding of God. If you grew up with an angry dad, I would predict that you sometimes run on the idea that I have to behave or my heavenly Father is going to be mad. Now, are there things that upset God? Of course there are. But he gets upset because he genuinely loves us. He wants things for us. But one of the things that upsets him is that it breaks down our relationships with other people. And that's why I keep coming back to this idea that this won't matter tomorrow, but they will. This dumb little thing at McDonald's, I'm not going to think about that beyond today. But my son who was in the car listening to me get upset, he will be. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day. There's a Olympic athlete from back in the 80s, gold medalist, that coined a phrase that we've it's just become common. It's like public domain now. We use it all the time. Most people don't know that it came from a guy named Peter Vidrek, gold medalist back in the 80s. He said this, don't sacrifice what you want most for what you want now. This could be true of a diet. This could be true of a money-saving goal when you're tempted to spend it right. Like we could apply this in all areas. But for me, the thing I want most, and I know this is going to sound like the cheesy Christian pastor guy answer, but the thing I want most in my life is to be like Jesus. I had the privilege of sitting in a funeral yesterday where a great guy who had passed away, his 2 children stood on the platform and went on and on about how much like Jesus he was. And I thought, that's what I want my kids to say when I'm dead. I don't care if they talk about how much money they inherited, because they ain't getting any. I don't care if they talk about the great house or the great car or the cool vacations. I want them to say, I know what Jesus is like because I got to be around my dad. We should all live that way. I want the people in my life to know what Jesus is like. So what I want most is to be like him. So here's the good/bad news. This is what like him looks like. The Lord is compassionate and merciful. He is slow to get angry and filled with unfailing love. And you are the recipient of that. At some point in your life, you realized God had drawn a double line, and he was going to be behind you and for you. That the do's and don'ts, the ins and outs when it comes to following Jesus, those are holistic care for you. They're not just him being a rule monger. And we are to then give that to others, because we're just doing what he does. So, a lot of times when we talk about anger, most people say, well, I need to add on something. I need to add on some counseling. I need to add on a book. I need to add on some breathing exercises. And all of a sudden, you're kind of irritated because you don't have time for all that. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Do the opposite and start taking things out. Or another way to put it would be slow down. Be willing to set the cruise control and get in the right lane and chill. Will you get there as fast? No. Will you lose to your GPS? Yes. But instead of looking at that as a countdown to like when I'm going to be late, if you left early, you could go, look how much time I have left. And I don't need to drive as fast. I don't need to drive as crazy. So to help you with this, I'm going to give you a list of things that I'm working on that maybe you can adopt that'll help you slow down and maybe eventually help you be a little less irritated and a little less angry. 1, leave early. Novel idea, I know. But if you leave early, you've got a lot of more time for stuff to go wrong. That chucklehead driving on the interstate, they aren't going to bother you as much. Because who cares? I got time. That changes everything. Plan for the plan to bust. This is really important if you have kids. Your vacation will not go the way you want it to. Your outing will not go the way you want it to. Those shoes will not go on as easy as you want them to. Like, just plan for it to go wrong. That might sound depressing, but at least you won't be let down. You'll be pleasantly surprised when it goes better. Cancel stuff. I was talking to a friend this week, and we both were saying, isn't it kind of nice when people cancel on you? It's like a gift of an hour. But what if you took the reins and said, you know what, I'm clearing stuff out. I'm going to make room. I would say put rest on your calendar. I'm hesitant to tell you this because you're going to use it against me later. But I could show you on my calendar, I block out rest time on my calendar. I put it like sometimes all of Saturday. And you know why I do that? So I don't have to lie when I tell people that want to go to lunch or want to go to dinner, I have something on my calendar, I'm sorry. I know, you're going to ask me to lunch, and I'm going to say I got something on my calendar. You're going to be like, yeah, sure you do. But I really do. It's a great tactic. You can be honest, and you can be taking care of yourself where you have a few minutes to breathe. And you're maybe not so irritated. And lastly, I'd say invite people along. Like, get some accountability. Here's the beautiful thing. This week is the start of group season for spring. And a lot of you are going to have a discussion based on this talk this week. Invite other people in. Say, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z to slow down so I'm a little less irritated. I feel a little less out of control, which allows me to be a little less angry and a lot more like Jesus. Will you ask me about that every once in a while? Will you pray for me about those things? CBS News did a study, and they polled a huge number of people in the United States, and they asked them, do you think that the current generation is angrier than the previous generation? 84% of them said absolutely. And everybody in this room would go, yeah, that's for sure. We're all a lot more angry than my grandparents or my great-grandparents were. And they had less. So for me, what we're talking about doing when we think about what would people say about us as Christians if we got this right, they might say something like this: they're so old school. They are so old school. They just go with the flow. They don't get freaked out about time. They're not constantly looking at their watch. They're not constantly rushing on to the other thing. And you know what I've noticed? They're not as mad as half the people in my life. They got a lot longer fuse than most people I know. They're kind of old school in that way. And the more they get to know us, they understand what that's coming from. But maybe that's what they said at the start. Because we have come to understand that this won't matter tomorrow. But they will. Those people, those kids, those neighbors, those coworkers, those spouses, they'll matter. So we strive to be less angry for them, because we're trying to be like him. Let's pray. Father, thank you for being slow to anger. You know better than anybody that I have been the glad recipient of your very long temper. I'm sorry that I don't always give that to the people in my life that I love the most. I'm sorry I don't give that to the people on the road when I'm driving like I should. I'll need your help if I'm going to do it different. So please, for all of us, as we go into our weeks ahead, our days ahead, will you help us to be a lot more like you and a little less angry as we do. We love you so much. Thanks for loving us. Amen. Thanks so much for letting us be part of your week. Before you go, if you weren't here at the beginning and you need to find out what is going on around here at Great Lakes, make sure you go to our website, or better yet, get the app on your phone. All of this stuff is there for you. If you have kids over in the kids wing, please send somebody to go get them right away, because our third service starts real soon and we got to make space for those kids. If you could help us out with that, that'd be great. Have a great week, everybody.